Hello. Are we live, Dr. Carter?
Live. We are live. So it looks like, Steven, for some reason, LinkedIn is giving us a problem, but that's okay. We're live on Facebook. We can share it with LinkedIn a little bit later. We just want to say happy Motivation Monday to everyone out there. Today is Monday, and we always like to start off the week on a positive note. So today is our Motivation Monday. But I guess we're talking about a topic that's not necessarily motivational today, but it is something that's discussed.
Good topic, a great topic today.
Yeah, great topic today. So there's been so much discussion over vaccinations and over COVID-19, and there's been a lot of talk and discussion about fears and if we should vaccinate or if we should not. We're not having this conversation from a medical professional standpoint. It's really just a conversation. We really just want
Dialogue.
to inform as much as we possibly can, right, Stephen? And just try to share the information that's out there for people to research on their own, and then really just kind of talk about it and just say, hey, Stephen, what do you think? Sterling, what do you think? And we just kind of sit back and just have a conversation. And we want to have a conversation with you guys as well. So we need you to jump on and let us know you're out there and send questions. Oh, they got
absolutely. So you guys probably know a lot more than we do. So just chime in. We're just going to get the conversation started. Just dialogue. That's all it is.
That's right. So it looks like we're live. So I'm going to share this on my story real quick, and we're going to get this party going. Okay, so let's see here. I'm just making one other change.
Okay,
because I want to be able to see our comments and all that kind of good stuff. So we're live and we're going. It looks like we have about 13 people that are watching already, but we need comments. So we want you guys to just give a shout out. Let us know you're here and you're listening. Let us know where you're listening from. If you're coming from work, if you're in Houston, if you're in Oklahoma, if you're in Chicago, Detroit, we want to know where you are and where you're coming from. Or where you're listening in from. So we can go ahead and just kind of give you a shout out and just say hello.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's see here, and I'm just looking, and I don't know why. I think we've got quite a few people on. They're picking up pretty quickly, but I'm not able to see the comments for some reason. Oh, I see Fred Demerson. He's saying he's representing from Oklahoma. So hello, Fred. Good to have you on.
State Oklahoma. What's up, Fred?
Yeah. So I guess we should go ahead and just at least start talking a little bit and just kind of talk.
Let's introduce the subject. Yeah.
Introduce the subject. So as we all know, COVID-19 or coronavirus 19 is something that is plaguing the entire world right now. It was, I think, first discovered in the United States right at the beginning of the year. There's been a lot of talk about where it originated from. We're not going to get into the whole debate back and forth on that. But what we do know at this point, and I'll just read the statistics, there are 14.9 million positive cases of coronavirus 19 in the United States. And of those 14.9 million cases, we've had 283,000 deaths. That's happened. Worldwide, that's just the United States, and worldwide, we've had 67.3 million individuals that have contracted the coronavirus and 1.54 million that have actually died from it. And the scary part about that is that what they're saying is that because there's so many asymptomatic people out there, meaning that they don't have symptoms, really they're thinking that the number of infected is about 10 times the numbers that we're seeing. So that means that we're really talking about 150 million positive cases in the United States. The mortality rate doesn't change as much, but the infection rate, we're definitely, the science is saying that it's about 10 times what we're seeing there. But one of the good things that we can say is that even though those numbers are really, really large, the current fatality rate in the United States is at 1.9%. So even though we are seeing a lot of people dying, and it's absolutely horrible, because any death, not just one death is too many, but the percentage of people that are dying in comparison to the number that have been contracted is 1.9%. Now that actually varies; it goes up and down and that sort of thing. But that's where we sit right now, as of today, as of John Hopkins University, which is a very, very valid and research tool. So
let me add on one point though, and as a former COVID, I contracted the virus, and luckily a survivor. Feel very blessed about that. What I will add on to what Dr. Carter said is that although the fatality rate is very low, we still don't know the impact of the long-term impact of the effects of COVID. And there's so many people that are dealing with long-term effects. There's still a lot of people with short-term memory loss. There's a lot of people that still haven't gotten back their taste yet, their sense of smell. So I think that we can't just judge it just by the fatality rate, because again, we don't know the long-term impacts. And I can tell you that for myself, I think that I'm almost at about 100%, but it took quite a while to get back. And I consider myself lucky, because there are some that are still dealing with those long-term impacts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're just blessed that you made it to the other side, because there's a lot of people that didn't. So that's real. A couple of shout outs. We definitely have the Noops are in the building. So shout out to Kenneth Williams. He's asking about, are we taking the vaccination? Stay tuned. We're gonna talk about that in the end, and we're gonna have a really good conversation on should we or should we not vaccinate. We're not recommending it. We're not recommending one way or the other. We're just gonna have a conversation about it, and we'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Shout out to Raphael Moore, Alpha Pi, Langston
Cali, representing.
Monty Ward, good friend and veteran. Fred Demerson from Langston. We got Nisha Shea. Nisha is a custom designer. She actually designs some custom clothing for me. Does a great job, and she's a twin. So shout out to Nisha for the twins. And Ron Drink, what's up, Noob? One of the old school Noob.
What's up, Noob?
Langston. Yolanda Green is here, and so Yolanda's saying that she doesn't have any taste or smell, so we'll keep you in our prayers.
We will, definitely.
And Melvin Gaines from Langston is saying hello, and Sydney Sessoms, our brand director from back at Langston, when a lot of people don't know, we used to play the tuba. We still do. We're tuba players.
Yeah, but, Sydney Sessom's one of the coolest Sigmas I've ever met. That's a cool guy.
That's hard. That's hard. Yeah, definitely. Sid was much love to Sid, and he's my frat brother, Kappa Kappa Psi, so music fraternity. But definitely, and Melvin Gaines. Melvin, happy Founders Day to you, my brother. I know Alpha Phi Alpha just had their Founders Day.
Okay, go. Let's get to it, sir.
Let's get him back into it. And hey, Cassandra. So one other thing that we wanted to talk about in regards to coronavirus and the effects is the effects that it has on people of color. And a lot of people don't realize how it's affecting us a lot more. I guess it's a lot more prevalent with people of color, not just African Americans, but really almost anyone of color in comparison to our Caucasian European counterparts. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But just to kind of give you an open-eye view of what's going on, we are 1.7%. Almost twice as likely to contract the coronavirus in comparison to white folks. We are 4.1 times. Four times as likely to be hospitalized, to end up in the hospital because of COVID-19, and we are almost 3 times as likely to die from it. And those numbers are really just absolutely mind blowing. And I want us to think about those as we start talking about the vaccinations and should we or should we not. Keep in mind that as people of color, we are more susceptible to this virus than anyone else. 4 times more likely to go into the hospital, 3 times more likely to die from it, 2 times more likely, 1.7 times more likely to be accurate to actually get the virus itself. So really interesting statistics there. We'd love you guys to kind of chat and tell us what do you think about that. And Stephen, share your thoughts. What do you think about how it's affecting people of color?
Well, I mean, it definitely is something that we've all seen the statistics. We talk about health disparities in certain communities, and a lot of discussion on whether or not the COVID-19 can be made into a political thing or a racial thing or whatever. The bottom line are the facts are the facts. It is impacting certain communities at a higher rate than other communities, and that's black and white. There's nothing we can say about it. The reason that we want to have this discussion today, though, is that even though the likelihood and the impact and the severity of the disease impacts our community at a higher rate, because of some of the historical things that have happened in our communities, and to our foreparents, our forefathers, rather, with things such as the Tuskegee experiment and things as slavery and just the overall thought process of how we're treated when we go into a hospital to receive services, or even go into just to see your primary care physician. Those anxieties, those things are impacting the way that we view this COVID vaccine. So the statistics say that only 32% of African Americans at this moment are willing to take the vaccine. That means that 68% of African Americans are unwilling to take the vaccine. That's compared to 52% of whites that are willing, 56% of Hispanics that are willing. So there is a serious mentality, a serious gap, if you will, in terms of comfortability around should we take this vaccine or shouldn't we, because of all of the historical things. So we kind of wanted to dive into that and talk about that. So Dr. Carter, maybe talk about the Tuskegee experiment and kind of where your thoughts are on why that's had such a big impact on our community.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that there's been more discussion about the Tuskegee experiment or the Tuskegee study just more recently than probably in many years. And so we thought it would be a great opportunity for an educational moment and just really kind of talk about it, because I think everyone throws out the Tuskegee experiment, but they don't necessarily know what really happened. So we'll just kind of take you through it really quick. So back in 1932, of course, in a small county, Macon County, very close to Tuskegee University, there was a study that was done on people of color, on African Americans, primarily African American men. The thought process, and this was done by the government, there was a concern or a question on how syphilis affected people, and the thoughts is that syphilis affected people differently based on their race or their cultural background. And so what the United States, what the government decided to do was to do a study and to determine how African Americans responded to the treatment or lack thereof of syphilis. And here's where the problem lies. So one, just so you guys understand in regards to research and study and that sort of thing, when we do a research, and I say we because in science and healthcare, there's a lot of different research that's done. There's always a experiment group, there's a treatment group, and there's a placebo group. And so typically, if we're trying to see if something is beneficial, we'll treat both groups the same from what they know, but one group may receive a placebo, meaning that that the pill that they're taking does not have, it's just a water pill or a salt pill. Whereas the other group, the treatment group, is actually taking the medication. And so what we try to see is if there's a clinical significance between those. And so what the Tuskegee experiment was supposed to be doing was to determine if the treatments that they were using were going to, well, let's back this up. What they told those in the Tuskegee experiment is that everyone would receive treatment. What happened is that no one received treatment. There was a placebo group that didn't have syphilis whatsoever. There was a group that did have syphilis and received no treatment. And the study was supposed to end in 6 months. It didn't. It ended up being extended significantly to the time frame of, I believe, 47 years. And we're from 1932 all the way up until 1972. And at that point in time, there was a big exposed kind of a campaign that came out, and they talked about it. And it ended up with some millions of dollars that were awarded to those people that were involved in the experiment, as well as their children, and they received free health care and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, what went wrong with the Tuskegee experiment is that it wasn't that they gave them syphilis. They actually already had syphilis, but they went into this thinking that they were getting treatment, and they did not get treatment. And even back in 1945, when they discovered penicillin and that it was an effective treatment, they still did not give these individuals treatment using penicillin. Instead, they allowed them to go into the latent phases or the chronic late stages of syphilis, and where some died, some had deformities, and it was a really, really dark part of history in regards to the United States.
So obviously that moment, and all of us, most African Americans, they always reference the Tuskegee experiment. And thank you, Dr. Carter, for sharing the true historical piece of that, right? Because I think there's some misconceptions about what really happened. But the bottom line is that a portion of our population was treated unfairly, was given bad information. And so that historical impact continues to impact us today. Not to mention just that part. We also talk about there's just a part of the community, a part of the population that's anti-vaccines whatsoever, right? One of the things that I'm sure Dr. Carter is going to talk about is that there are different types of vaccines that can be given. And early on, vaccines such as the measles and polio, you are actually getting a live part of the virus in your body that's being entered into your body. It's a much milder, much less effective part of the virus that goes into your body to get your red blood cells to start to create antibodies to treat that and to get you well. But this specific virus this specific vaccine, the new COVID-19 vaccine, uses a new technology called mRNA. Which is more of a instigator for a protein that teaches the body how to treat, how to create antibodies and treat the vaccine. Dr. Carter, you want to talk about that a little bit more, because I'm not the clinical guy.
You're doing great, and again, guys, we're not coming from a medical professional standpoint. For those that know, I have a doctorate in physical therapy. I'm not a medical doctor, so we're not giving out medical advice. We're really just educating and having a conversation. But just around the COVID-19 vaccine, of course, when we talked about earlier how the COVID-19 virus hit really, really hard. Well, I think it was in August, if I'm not mistaken. At any rate, Operation Warp Speed was enacted, and this was done by the Trump administration, which was a wonderful thing. It was an opportunity. It was a really, really fast push to try to get a vaccination for this virus so that we could get back to our normal lives. And it was $1 billion investment into the top of the top pharmaceutical companies, research companies to figure out a solution to this. This was going on across the entire world, but Operation Warp Speed was specifically for the United States. Well, what that ended with or it's not even over. But what we have at this point is we have 3 vaccines that were approved to go into phase 3 with Operation Warp Speed. And those 3, and Stephen mentioned one of them, we have the Moderna, we have Pfizer, and we also have Oxford, and which is also part of AstraZeneca. So those are the 3 different vaccines that were offered up into the 3rd trial. Well, as you guys know, back in early November, we received our first kind of feedback that Pfizer actually in their 3rd trial showed a 90% efficacy rate in regards to its ability to actually prevent the coronavirus. And then about a few weeks later, maybe just a week later, Moderna then came out and said that they have a 94% efficacy rate on their treatment, on the benefits of their treatment in regards to the coronavirus. So that's where we are as far as the vaccines are concerned. They have not been approved by the United States. They're just on the last stage, or by the FDA, because it has to be approved by the FDA to actually allow us to start receiving the vaccine. But they are expecting that approval to happen any day now. So it could be this week, it could be next week. Hospitals and clinics and facilities already have a lot of the tools and the supplies in order to administer this vaccine. So it's just a matter of time. So now that we've given all of the fun education and all that kind of good stuff, now it's time to get into the real discussion, which is, now that you know about the vaccine, now you know about the virus, now you know about why we have had fears as people of color behind just trusting the government that they're going to have our best interest in mind. Now we have to talk about the solution. And this is not a conversation of us pushing you either way. We're just wanting to have the conversation. So we love to hear from you guys, and we're seeing a lot of comments here. So I want to just kind of go through a few of those, and then we'll talk. Okay. So let's see here. So it looks like Nisha has a natural, I guess, treatment. She's recommending apple cider vinegar, mint leaves, castor oils, and a few natural help. Well, a few things that will help with taste, bringing the taste and the smell back. It sounds like Nicole. Hey, Nicole. She's saying that she has some concerns as well. Larry Stone, another one of our Langston brothers, Alpha Phi Alpha brothers, says that it scares him. He's not sure about why they're pushing the test so hard. Raphael's done the research, and he is you can find out that much. Keisha is saying that a lot of people had syphilis, and they already had syphilis in the Tuskegee experiment. You're absolutely correct. They already had syphilis. It was just a matter of treatment or no treatment, and they thought they were getting treatment, and they were not. Let's see here. We've got Kevin and Barbara King. They're saying they're willing to take the vaccine. I like it. We can't live our lives based on history. We have to come along. We've come a long way since that experiment, which is very, very true. Nisha says, and she says, thank you for sharing the information. She's going to look into it. Cortez, our cousin, is saying, Mr. Carter, he's vitalized a historic calamity, the Tuskegee experiment. A lot of great comments here. We'll keep it going. But Stephen, share some thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm gonna play in this case. I'm gonna talk about the anti-vaccine side of things. Dr. Carter is a lot more conservative, and he's been he's taking the blue pill, as they say. He's a part of the matrix. I don't know what he's but I'm up here, proud to the people. So no, but seriously, we talk about our people, and as Cortez mentioned, starting back in history, we know that slaves were actually purchased by white physicians to have experiments. I mean, it started back then. Then we have Tuskegee, but even now, when we talk about, there's only 5% of physicians that are African American. A lot of us are anti going into a doctor's office, going into a physician's office, getting treatment. And the reasons for that are because of the anxiety that we have, that we go in, and we don't get treated the same. We don't get taken seriously. There is a belief that African Americans are impervious to pain, that we have a high level of a high pain threshold. So for that reason, we're not treated with medications in the same form as others are treated. And I'm not speaking. I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just kind of speaking of some things that have ran through African American psyche, right? And so as we get, even when you talk about COVID, right, there were complaints at the very beginning of patients going into African American patients with COVID going into the doctor and being sent home with cough syrup and Tylenol and saying, hey, go quarantine, drink some fluids, and you'll be okay. And some of those patients end up passing away home alone. So there is some valid reasons for people to be concerned, especially the African American community. That being said, though, the fact that this disease is impacting us at such a greater rate, and the impacts to our community has to make one consider that is it worth the risk of saying I'm not going to take the vaccine in lieu of potentially passing away or passing the virus on to a loved one and then passing away. And so it's a big risk to take.
It is. It's a very big risk to take. And I definitely would say that with anything we do in life, it has to be a calculated risk. It has to be something that you think about, you weigh the pros and the cons, and you make the best informed decision that you can make, because we really don't know what we don't know, right? So some of the effects or potential side effects of a vaccination we may not know for 3 to 5 years. But what we do know is right now we are in a point in a situation where it's almost catastrophic, and it's affecting people of color more prevalently than it is those of that are not of color. And so one of the things that I think someone talked about it too in the comments is that we're not in 1945 anymore. We're not in 1932 anymore. And this vaccination is for the entire, our program, this push is for the entire world and for the entire country. And it's not just it's not even the US government that's governing it. It's actually top pharmaceutical companies that are governing this. And it's the best of the best scientists, the best of the best pharmacists that are over these programs. I know that there's a concern with how quickly they've been able to get through these trials, when typically in research it may take 3 to 5 years for a vaccine to be approved. And I'm only talking off of my readings and my understanding, so this is not necessarily factual, but my understanding is, or not I won't say it, there is some facts to it. Because of the push, because of the money, because of the emphasis, because of the urgency, there's a lot of times in government we have what we call red tape. It may take you 12 months or 6 months to get from one phase to the next phase, simply because it's just the politics of just trying to move the system, right, and move the programming. When you have everyone all on one accord and are working towards one common goal, it's amazing what you're able to do. And I think it's simply amazing that the United States and really the entire world has been able to come up with not one vaccination, not two, but we're on the cusp of 3. And there's actually several other countries that actually have vaccinations as well, that we really are making a big difference. And I think we're changing the way that we'll perform experiments, we'll do vaccinations moving forward. And so I think it's a strong and the right push. And I think vaccinations are it's definitely something worth considering. I'm not pushing you either way, but it's definitely worth considering the risk.
And I'll add on to that Sterling and I have spoken with friends of ours that are physicians that are in epidemiology disciplines and understand this space very well. There are differences between the vaccines and the companies that are producing those vaccines. And so as a nation and as a people, we have to be more educated than we ever have been. We have the ability to be more educated. I would encourage everyone out there to do their research, to Google. I've been told that the Moderna vaccination is the best of those that are out on the market. That's just what I've been told. I'm not saying that you guys take that and run with it, do your own research. But obviously there are a number of different companies that are producing things that are in different manners, different trials, different spaces. And we have to know what that, look at that and see what's going to happen for us. The other things that I'll bring up, and Dr. Carter, I again, like Dr. Carter mentioned, we're not trying to push one way or the other, but, we have to make sure that we understand in these trials, only about 5 to 10% of the trials were of the trial members were African American nature. We realize it's very evident that COVID impacts people of color in a different way than it impacts other people. So it would make one think that the vaccination would also impact, people of color in a different manner. So, we don't know the long-term implications of the COVID disease, nor do we know the long-term implications of the vaccine. So it is something that we all must take very seriously, and as Sterling mentioned, weigh the risks, because there's a lot to assess and make a decision upon.
Great response, Stephen. And a couple of things before we close, because I know we promised 20 minutes typically on our Motivational Mondays, but this is such a great topic. Can't stop it right in the middle. But one of the things that I mentioned earlier about the disproportionate number of people of color that are that have contracted the coronavirus and that are dying from it and that are being hospitalized by it are from it. Just so you know, this is not necessarily because we as people of color are necessarily weaker, or there's something that's genetically made with this, that there's some kind of predisposition of it being that being the reason why we're contracting it more. That's not the case. Actually, it's really more environmental more than anything. What they're saying is that typically we live in more urban areas, and in urban areas, the number of the population is much more dense. So, for example, Stephen and I are in Houston. It's the fourth largest city in the United States. There's a lot more people, so there's a lot more chance and possibility of contracting the virus. There's a lot more minorities in bigger, more urban cities. We tend to work more in essential fields, so you have a lot more African Americans and people of color working in the grocery stores and working at McDonald's and working in healthcare and working in those kind of places. Those are at-risk type of fields and occupations. We don't have equal access to healthcare. We don't have equal access to healthcare. And Stephen spoke eloquently about this. When we do get healthcare, sometimes we're not received, or we don't get the same treatment that some others do. We're taken for granted. But one thing that we do know, that I would implore everyone to really make a change, is that we as people of color, we have a lot of chronic conditions. And those chronic conditions are not because we were born with those conditions. A lot of it is environment, it's health, it's diet. If you have high blood pressure, more than likely it's because you're eating salty foods. If you have high cholesterol, it's probably because you're eating too much bacon and pork and that kind of thing. Diabetes is usually caused by a lot. They're saying carbs, but it's really carbs, and it's also a high amount of fatty meats like steaks and pork and that sort of thing. So if we could change our diet, and if we could get out and walk and exercise and do 30 minutes of walking per day, we could really change some of the dynamics around chronic conditions. Because if you go in and you get COVID and you already have high blood pressure or high cholesterol or diabetes, then that is an underlying condition, and it puts you more at risk. So just think about those things. And the last thing that they say in regards to the effects on people of color is that we have a lot more stress in our lives, and stress affects our immune system. So if you're stressed, if you're not able to control that stress, you got to let it go. Because if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not doing any things in order to relieve the stress, it's also affecting you physically, and it's affecting your health. So just wanted to leave you guys on those notes. Stephen, any final thoughts before we close it out and say
So
hello.
just a final disclaimer, social media ripped into the young lady from Black Panther that's supposed to be the new Black Panther. What is her name? The actress that she shared a video about how she was, anti-vaccines. Y'all don't rip us a new one now. We said the disclaimer is out there. We're only sharing information. We're not taking one position or another. We really want you guys to make your own educated decision. But it is a very important topic that's impacting our community even more so. It's a big decision for everyone to make. And everyone has to make their own decisions. But definitely what we would say is that don't use YouTube as your your source of information, your only source of information. Do your own research and be educated about the decision that you make.
And before we go, just a few more shout outs, because we've had so many people, so many of our great friends and family members. But shout out to Mr. Lawrence, who is a icon at Langston University, a professor, and he's great, brilliant man. Sabrina Rutledge, and again Iris Bradford, our cousin. Nisha and Keisha Willis from Langston had some great comments, and A Ware, our sister from another mother. Hello to A Ware in Dallas, and A Mac, a lot of Langston folks here. Antoine Drink, another frat. Chanya Marie, Sean Jones, our Sands, what's going on, Sean, and Larry Stone again. Let's see who else. Sean, saying hello to Sean, and Sharon Tunley. And the list goes on and on and on. But guys, we really had a great time today, just sharing our opinion on what was going on, and hopefully just sharing this information. And so until next time, we'll be back on next Monday for Motivation Mondays.
See you next week.
Peace.
Take care.